Exquail, Aquanasilam Nala, Atanaquail, Antepe Chantal Morve. The chair will call the meeting to order with great respect and humility. We acknowledge and honor the lands of the Snuneymuxw people. The Snuneymuxw people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardship, and expressions of reciprocity. We are going to go to number 2, the additions to the agenda. Any additions, deletions, or change in order to the agenda? If no, please have, if no, I'm going to look at the chat here for a second. I don't think there's any changes or deletions. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please? Seconded. You. Just a reminder too to put your comments in the chat, and I will read them out loud. Let's see here. Now we're going to go to number 6, approval of the minutes. That the minutes of the Education Committee meeting held on March 6, 2024 be approved. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes on March 6, 2024? Okay, Mark. And Naomi. Thank you. Is anybody against approving the minutes? Seeing none, we have passed that motion. Number 7, presentations. This is the exciting part. Super excited to hear from everybody. We have Kara Walsh from the École Quarterway PAC and Kelsey Chandler. You said that now, and it's stuck in my head. Kelsey Chandler, who are going to be talking about planting trees on school grounds. And take it away. I think it's going to be Kara who's going to be starting.
Hopefully I did that right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kara Walsh, and I am the PAC Vice Chair for École Quarterway. I would first like to acknowledge that Quarterway is located on the traditional and unceded territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. I would also like to acknowledge that I myself am a white settler. I am very grateful to be able to live, work, learn, and raise my children on Snuneymuxw land. It is everyone's responsibility to care for and to respect the land that we live on, and incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing and being is important as we move forward. Thank you very much to the Education Committee for allowing Kelsey and I the opportunity to come and speak with you today about our school's tree project. It is my pleasure to introduce Kelsey Chandler, who will be leading us through a short presentation. Kelsey is an incredible advocate for our school and is the lead on this project. So I'll hand it over to Kelsey. I will be in the background and can answer questions if there is any at the end of the presentation.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kara, for that very nice introduction. So I am just going to try to share my screen here, everyone. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So I would also like to thank the co-chairs of the Education Committee for allowing us this opportunity to present to you this evening. So I would just like to begin with a very brief overview of what has been planned for the Quarterway Tree Project. Quarterway Trees Project. So the school's PAC has allocated $7,500 to purchase a mixture of 17 large native and non-native coniferous and deciduous trees to be planted in 3 areas of the school grounds this April. These areas include, as you can see, a buffer here between the new playground and Bowen Road, which is right here. 3 trees adjacent to the new playground, and a selection of 7 trees that would be sited along the lower portion of the sloped area of the grounds. So the funds allocated by the PAC will also go towards the purchase of maintenance equipment such as hoses. And due to a lack of district staff capacity, parents have committed to watering the trees for the next 3 years until they become established. So this current iteration of the landscape plan is the result of extensive collaboration between both the school and district, but also the city of Nanaimo. And the city's urban forestry coordinator visited the site and provided his expertise regarding tree species selection and placement. He has also extended the city's wholesale nursery discount to help PAC purchase the trees and has arranged for the city to donate tree watering bags to the project. So just to give you a sense of the scale of what we're talking about this evening, this rendering shows, as you can see highlighted in yellow here, what the trees are anticipated to look like once they reach full maturity. And just please note that this is an older Google Earth image. It does not show the new playground, but the new playground is located right in this area here. So among the many benefits of planting trees that I'm sure we're all aware of, but things like creating noise and pollution buffers, this project will increase our children's connection to the land and their ecological literacy. It will help provide shaded spaces and restore ecological function to the site. It will help us to walk our collective path towards truth and reconciliation, and will provide an important opportunity to unite around a project that will benefit both our immediate and the broader community for generations to come. And just to get a little into the backstory on this project, the original concept for the Quarterway Playground replacement was to create a nature-based play area. And as far back as 2016, the plans for the playground always included the incorporation of trees and other landscaping, as this was integral to the vision for the playground. The Quarterway School administration and parents understood that the landscaping surrounding the playground was included in the project scope and would be completed concurrent with playground construction. The playground construction began during the winter of 2020, and the playground structures were completed in the spring of 2021. For the next year and a half, parents continued to inquire regarding the timeline of the tree planting. However, due to a variety of reasons, including staff shortages and turnover, parent volunteer turnover, COVID interruptions, and a change in the scope of the plan, no further project progress was made. This past winter, project approvals were started again. However, after receiving signed approvals from the facilities and maintenance staff, we have recently been told that the project would not proceed because the district currently doesn't have land use guidelines as part of their environmental stewardship action plan. And we have been told that the guidelines need to be created in order for the trees to be planted according to the guidelines. So our schools PAC is very familiar with the goals of the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan that was adopted in 2022, and the Trees Project has always complemented the aims of the plan. The project has incorporated native species where possible and appropriate given future climate scenarios, and the long-term aim is to restore natural green space and ecological function to the site. Historical research indicates that the Quarterway site was fully forested prior to the 1930s, and by planting trees, we'll be working towards regenerating the land to what it once was. We've brought this issue to the committee this evening because as we continue to wait for project approvals, we keep missing the planting windows that would give the trees the best chance of survival. I'm sure we're all familiar with the challenges of getting such a project to completion, and each time it gets delayed, momentum is lost, and the process must effectively be restarted. Parents in our school administration feel very strongly that this initiative is one that everyone can confidently support. And this project, in one form or another, has been in stream for 8 years, since long before the adoption of the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan. So consequently, we ask that you grandfather in this project at this time and allow the trees to be planted this month. As planned, we would like to have the trees in the ground by April 22nd, April 22nd, so that we can coordinate a celebration to coincide with Earth Day. It would be a fantastic opportunity to invite our broader community to come together around a project that will provide a positive environmental legacy for current and future generations. Thank you very much. That concludes our presentation, and we welcome any questions anyone may have.
I would ask anybody if they would like to ask a question to either put it in the chat or raise the hand function. Greg?
Yes, thank you for the presentation. Quick question. You had mentioned that the selection of plant species included both native and non-native species. And I'm wondering if there's what the rationale is, I suppose, for limiting the selection to native species which are drought tolerant and also in line with what our environmental stewardship action plan is trying to achieve.
Yes, thank you, Greg, for your question. We have been working quite closely with the District Facilities and Maintenance Department, and they have fairly specific criteria for the trees that can be selected. And so we have tried to fit as much as possible into the criteria that they've outlined for us, but also trying to incorporate as many native species as possible. We've also relied heavily on the expertise, as I said, of the city's urban forestry coordinator to pick species that are going to suit the site well and are not going to cause any issues. We'd originally proposed big leaf maple as a species, but around a playground that isn't appropriate because as they mature, they have large branches that are prone to, falling off the tree onto a playground would not be an ideal scenario. So we've relied on Patrick McIntosh from the city, as well as the head horticulturalist from Green Thumb Nursery, who had lots of good recommendations regarding tolerance and some of the newer climate-related pests that we're seeing impact on our native species.
Do you have a follow-up question, Greg?
No, thank you.
Tanya, she has a question but not for the presenters. So she thinks you might need a motion to add to new business. I will go to Naomi, and once we're done with our questions, I think maybe that's something you can bring up, Tanya. Thank you. Naomi, you are next.
Hi there. Thank you for your presentation, and I really appreciate the efforts you're making to, help the ecosystem. And I just think I always drive by there and it's just a blank field, so I appreciate all that. I was just wondering if you could clarify. You were saying that it was approved by facilities, but then it was halted. Can you explain that to me again? Why?
Certainly. My understanding of what has sort of conspired is that, we've met multiple times with the facilities planner. There's been a lot of back and forth trying to sort of tweak this to fit everybody's criteria. The facilities and the maintenance department heads, I guess, whoever's in charge of those approvals have signed off on it. But my understanding is that when it reached management level, that they realized at that point that there was an issue and that they realized that we couldn't proceed because there were no land use guidelines to guide the placement of the trees on the school grounds, which is an action outlined in the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
No
Mhm.
follow-up questions, Naomi?
No, thanks.
Tom?
Hi there. Thanks for joining us this evening, and I appreciate your opening. It was fantastic. I wanted to ask a question about the size of the trees along Bowen Road. I know you're not a landscape architect, but are we talking about mature, big old, hug'em trees, or what are we talking about along Bowen Road there?
Along Bowen Road, you know what, the exact species is escaping me right now, but they are maples that would be consistent with what has already been planted along there. So they're deciduous and they would continue that line of trees that's already existing. It's not anticipated that the canopy is going to impede on, the city's property or the sidewalks. They would be placed far enough away from the fence that we wouldn't have to worry about the roots creeping and causing any issues there. Yeah, does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, you've answered a whole bunch of questions that I hadn't even thought about, Kelsey. So thank you very much.
welcome.
I'm going to let the city worry about the roots under the sidewalk because I actually worry about student safety. And I think that mature trees along a busy boulevard is actually not just aesthetically pleasing, it meets some of our environmental goals, but this could be a huge safety aspect. In the event of the worst case scenario beside a 4-lane road, a chain link fence is no comparison to a mature maple. So I think there's a lot to be gained from this project, and I just wanted to check on that. And so again, thank you for your work and your devotion to the community. I put 2 through Quarterway, and I got 1 leaving this year. So thank you very much for making their school a little bit brighter, a little bit better.
Thank you.
No follow-up questions, Tom?
No, that was a great answer though.
Yeah, and you can hug any tree. Okay, it doesn't matter the size, right? I just want to clarify that for everybody. So do we have any more questions or comments here? I have a question, but I was hoping other folks would give them a chance first. Okay. Well, I'll ask, and if anyone comes up with something else, let me know. I actually have 2 kind of now that we spoke a bit more here. So one is more of a curiosity question, and it's regards to the trees on the hill, and it's more of a question because that's a hill that everyone sleds on in the wintertime. So are we creating a slalom course now for the children? I'm actually kind of curious, like how was the feedback from families when they found out that most of it would be kind of like cut off sort of thing? I'm curious about that.
Carrie, can I take that one? That was something that was brought forward by our families, but I think they all recognize that that maybe one day every 3 years when you can actually sled on that hill, the benefits of trees being there all the time outweighs some of those concerns. There is still going to be a section of the hill, kind of the steepest area, that still won't have trees planted at the bottom. But like my daughter said this morning, she'll be like, oh, it would be kind of like an obstacle course. It'd be great for sledding. And we do plan on sort of mitigating damage to the trees and any safety concerns by erecting some kind of a barrier until those trees get to be large enough that that's no longer a real concern. Kara, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, sure. I think to your point, the biggest concern from our families wasn't necessarily that the kids wouldn't have a place to sled anymore. It was more that we wanted to protect the trees that were getting planted and make sure that they weren't damaged at any point during the year, snow or summer. So there was that. I do think I think it's kind of hard to see maybe from the picture, but they will be spread out. We do have like those big goalposts at the bottom of the hill as well. That kids could potentially slide into. Obviously, children's safety is extremely important, and we actually don't allow sledding during school hours. You're allowed, obviously, parents can bring their kids to sled on the weekends and whatnot, but the school does have a strict policy of no sledding of any kind on that hill during school hours. So, yeah, I think that sledding would still probably be, you could still do it.
And thank you, because that was a little bit of a an alternate question too, was the safety of the children and the safety of the trees once they get planted, and how sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry for interrupting. When you're done, can I just add something quickly?
You're more than welcome to add it right now.
Okay,
Thank you.
I just wanted to say that the reason for the placement at the base of the hill, we'd originally proposed it and thought that at the top of the hill would make sense, both to help with the erosion aspect, as well as privacy and barrier from sound and traffic pollution. But it was recommended by the facilities and maintenance as well as the urban forestry coordinator, because I guess there is some kind of possibly like underground spring that comes up at the base of the hill there. And so that would help these trees to be self-watering over the longer term. It's quite wet there, and the facilities and maintenance departments really welcomed the foresting of that area of the hill. I guess they thought that would benefit greatly. So sorry, just to add that.
That's actually a great technical piece that we didn't know about, and I really appreciate you adding that bit of knowledge of why the placement was where it is. I see it also as a screen for the very, very hot weather that we're continuing to have, and rising temperatures, and having the ability to have it self-watering in a way really helps to keep them alive and growing. Yes, Kara.
I do know that this is a completely separate issue, and we won't go down this path too much, but our field, I'm sure you guys have heard this multiple times, that the Quarterway field is extremely wet. So during our track and field and our cross country season, we use the field. We've got a fairly mature cross country and track and field program, and we have lots of kids that participate, and the field is always just like super soggy, and it's really difficult for us to train and practice on our field. So we're also hoping that the trees help mitigate some of that as well. Fingers crossed.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
True enough. Tanya, I see you have a question.
Thank you. I just didn't think I had a question because I've discussed this with you guys before when I was at your PAC meeting, but I wanted to clarify something. You said Earth Day is April 22nd, and I just was looking at the calendar. That's a Monday. So if you were to do what you were thinking of doing, would that be an event during the school day or like an assembly kind of scenario? Okay. And have you already reached out to the elder and such? So is it like ready to go if the approval?
We have been in the process of that, and if we're just waiting to know if we can get the go ahead. We haven't wanted to, commit anyone because we value their time, but people are ready to go. We're gonna get a giant cake ordered.
And just one more quick follow up. If for some reason we couldn't as a board agree to have it for the 22nd, what is the absolute dead end of that? You said there was a planting window. What is the dead end window of that?
That's getting pretty close to the end of that window. We had to wait until April so that the ground on the hillside was dry enough for the machines to get in there without destroying it. But any much past the end of April, we're going to really run into risks with just heat.
Gotcha. Thank you. I appreciate your presentation and yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. I have one more clarifying question, and that's that this has been going on since 2016, like kind of like the wheels got put into motion in 2016 before there was the ESAP plan finalized and everything like that. So like a lot of that work that was done in regards to where to plant them, stuff and things like that. Was that part of the approval that happened in 2020, or was that after that?
So
Sure.
this is kind of part of the confusion with this project, is that the school administration and the parents were of the understanding that the trees had been included in that original approval. But then it wasn't until this past summer that we learned that, or were told that it was a separate school funded request that was required. So I don't think that was necessarily clear, and that predates both Kara and I's involvement. But just looking back on the history, I think it was understood that the trees would be included, but there may have been some communication issues there. I'm not really sure.
In the initial renderings, Kelsey, there were trees though that were.
Yes, there have always been trees and extensive plans for plants, because the whole concept around this was that nature playground idea, and getting kids interested in plants and trees and engaged in active play in their environment. So it was always part of the concept that the plan would include the trees.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mhm.
I don't see any more questions, but Tanya, would you like to make a motion?
Thank you. Yes, let me get my camera on, sorry. Yes, motion that we move this issue under tonight's new business for discussion so that we can determine if we want to give staff, get more information from staff, and also so we can see if we might have a motion to direct staff on this. Because it seems fairly timely that we figure this out tonight if we can. To the extent that we can.
Okay, so a motion to move
To discuss this presentation under tonight's new business.
to discuss orderly presentation under new business. Okay. All right, Mark seconds it. Would you like to motivate the motion?
I think that this is a fairly timely matter, and as a board, I have some questions for staff that I need to clarify, for one. And I do already admit that I'm starting to have some thoughts about where I land on this issue. And I think that it behooves us as a board to determine where we are on this tonight, so that that the presenters know whether they're gonna, how we're gonna land on this, so they know what's happening, so they can plan accordingly.
Oops. Thank you, Tanya. Charlene, you would like to speak to the motion?
Thank you. Yes, so I'm going to speak against this motion. Unfortunately, I don't find this to be an emergent issue. I understand the planting season is fairly narrow. However, this has been a project that's been ongoing for quite some time, and I feel that we've been put in a position where we have to make a decision tonight, and I'm not going to be prepared to do that without a report from staff. I've heard from the presenters tonight speaking on behalf of our staff, and I'm uncomfortable with that. I need information from our facilities department on what's been undertaken so far. And I don't think it's fair to put our staff in a position this evening to try to provide that to us without time for preparation. So for that reason, I'm against this motion this evening. Thanks.
Thank you, Charlene. Mark.
Thanks, Chantel. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. The excellent presentation. Part of it was, in fact, it is a time-sensitive issue with the dry season coming towards us, and I think we need to be as supportive to our PACs as possible. And this is one way that we can demonstrate that we support our PACs and support the hard work that parents do. So I'll be speaking in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to the motion? Okay, seeing no further comments in regards to this motion, I will put it on the floor for a vote. All those who are opposed, please put it in the chat. Okay. All trustees are here, correct?
That's correct.
I-
Trustee Lee is
Great.
absent tonight.
Okay, okay, great. Okay. Okay, one opposed. I will give it one more second because technology is slow and sometimes I get things a little bit late and I don't want to do that. That's not fair for anybody. Okay. So one opposed. It looks like the motion is passed. So we'll be adding that to our new business at the end of, well, into our new business. Let's see here. Great. Fantastic. So we'll be discussing this at the end in our new business, which is item 11. As Karen asked, you can go and then come back on to the public side to watch the rest of the meeting. And thank you very, very, very much on behalf of everybody. I really appreciate your presentation. It was really fantastic. Well laid out, really informative, and we appreciate your hard work on this. The many years of hard work that everyone has put in to this beautiful addition to Quarterway.
Thank you so much for allowing us the chance to speak to you this evening. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all very much. I hope you have a great evening. And if anybody does have additional questions, please feel free to reach out to Kelsey or I. We're happy to answer anything you have.
It's okay. Okay. So now we are going to be moving to 8 senior staff reports. We're going to start with a presentation from Bayview Elementary, and Jackie Poulin will be doing introductions. Thank you.
Through the chair, I think I'll be doing introductions if that's okay, or Jackie's here too. Okay, that's okay.
All good, all good.
Okay. All right, thank you so much. It's lovely to see all of you this evening. So overarchingly, our presentations this evening are around the board's goals of truth and reconciliation, as well as continuous improvement around our focus demographics. And so to start us off, I'd like to introduce the principal and vice principal from Bayview Elementary. So we've got Sue DeRosa and Sean Wayhill, and they're providing an update on truth and reconciliation at Bayview Elementary. So Sue and Sean, I'll turn it over to you. I'll leave my camera on for you so you have someone to look at when you're talking.
Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Laura, and thank you for allowing us to be here this evening. Icequail and Tapet Sue DeRosa, Tanisana, Calgary, Alberta. I am the proud principal of Bayview Elementary School and really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to come and brag about our school today.
Good evening, respected elders and leaders. Emtapa Sean Wayhill, Tanitsina, Nanaimo. My name is Sean Wayhill, and I am from Nanaimo.
I'm just going to share our screen. We have a presentation of pictures to show you. Can you see that? Perfect. Thanks.
Tia tala tuxnanemo molstimo ni haquishus tu tamox tonaquail. We give our highest gratitude and appreciation to the people of Nanaimo for allowing us on their land today.
We are really excited to show you the many ways in which Bayview works towards the NLPS goal and objectives around truth and reconciliation. For each objective, we're going to share how our students, staff, families, and community walk and paddle together, creating a safe, trusting, and supporting environment for all. First, a little bit about Bayview. We are at 227 students. Approximately 40% of our students are Indigenous. We have 39 staff members, 8 of which are Indigenous. We are a small school with a massively big heart. All right, objective number 1 of the Truth and Reconciliation goal asks us how we have implemented the CETSUS reconciliation framework into our school community. So one of the greatest things that we do at our school is our Friday gathering. Every Friday at 9 o'clock, the whole school meets in the gym. Our drumming group drums us into the gym. Then students participate in doing the land acknowledgement, and we have had volunteers as young as 5 stand up to do that. And some of them read it, or else they do their own acknowledgement, and it's amazing to watch. We spend our time celebrating student and staff success. We discuss upcoming events, give out running ribbons, acknowledge birthdays, and then we take the time to introduce a B word for the week, which I will talk about a little bit later, and our Hulkaminum word of the week. And then we focus on a behavior from our behavior matrix. At the end, our whole school sings a Hulkaminum song together with our drumming group before we leave the gym. This is a great community building event that students look forward to each week, and they're especially looking forward to next week, when Mr. Wayhill and I will be turned into human Sundays because we reached our jump rope for heart goal. I'm not sure that we're as excited as they are. The land is our teacher, so we spend a lot of time outside learning from the land. We go to the Cat Stream to do some cleaning, plant identification activities. We go on nature walks. We visit Departure Bay Beach a few times a year. We take care of our school gardens, which hold flowers, vegetables, and a variety of Indigenous plants. And we also work alongside of the South End Community Organization in caring for the Bing Key Food Forest, which provides food for the community. Our gardens have been highly regarded and recognized with the Farm to School Pollinator Award, and we are really proud of that. The Pollinator Award sparked a new community virtue program that we started this year. So taking the knowledge of how bees work together to care for their community, we're learning how we can work together as a collective community by living and working together while also taking care of ourselves. Each week we introduce a new bee word at gatherings, such as be respectful, be courageous. No, I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, I'm in a board meeting right now, but thank you. Okay. That's fine, yeah, thank you. So sorry for that. Okay. Anyway, then we learn the Hulkaminum, that word that corresponds with that B word. And we explore how that virtue builds our community. And then the students earn B tickets for demonstrating those virtues and get a weekly prize. There's a weekly prize draw at gatherings. Here's a picture of some of our happy B ticket winners. They love it. And so far we've received over 1,600 B tickets. So our kids are doing amazing. And finally, at the beginning of the year, we had t-shirts made for our staff. The words say Samsamaya Bayview, which means be Bayview. And we wear them every time that we take our students on in like a volleyball game or a basketball game, of which we are undefeated, very proudly.
Objective 2 leads us into how we support innovative Indigenous educational and community partnerships. We have many examples of how we do this to share with you tonight. We are in our final year of welcoming and embracing our students who attended Nisika Kumtuks. The transition began in the spring of 2022, where they operated on school property, but in their own classrooms. In 2022-23, the primary class was absorbed into the general primary classes in Bayview, and in 2023-24, we absorbed the intermediate classes. This transition has happened very smoothly because we worked hard on building strong relationships and trust with our NK families. You will find many examples of beautiful artwork from our local Nanaimo community on the inside and outside of our school. We have an incredible Indigenous learning team to help support our Indigenous students and programming. Elder Lolly shares her culture and childhood experiences. Miss Janice Wilson supports our Indigenous students in small groups in the mornings and provides Indigenous learning for our primary classes in the afternoon. Mr. Bob Wise joins us on Wednesdays to provide Hul'qumi'num language class to all intermediate classes and helps support our Indigenous learning elective. And finally, Miss Katina Monroe supports our Indigenous students with small groupings who do cultural crafting, cooking, and social, emotional, and academic work. Our team works in the Shikuptut, also known as the Gathering Place. This room provides a safe space for all students, holds many Indigenous books and art, and displays a variety of samples of the Hul'qumi'num language for our learners. This room is also open during long recess for students to go when they need a quiet break. Our students participate in a variety of Indigenous community events. Bob and Janice run an Indigenous elective group for any student who would like to join. It's amazing to see the diversity in this group. They have participated in drumming at the Rotary Bowl on Indigenous Peoples Day and have been invited by Elder Lolly to drum at the Elder Session of Slumps in May. We host and assist the community gardening maintenance days, hold special Indigenous ceremonies and awareness days, and feed our school and families the occasional chowder and bannock lunch. Our school has participated in many outside Indigenous opportunities such as canoeing with Gary Manson at Departure Bay Beach, doing a fall and spring session of Indigenous plant identification with Wildwood Eco Forest programs, and last year's canoe carving at Wildwood. Our students were given the opportunity to help launch a canoe, which they helped carve. We have also welcomed many guests to help us celebrate Indigenous events and ceremonies, such as the Winter Solstice Assembly with the Ladysmith Secondary Dancers with Patrick Alec, and Colleen Manson joined us for our Indigenous Peoples Day celebration. Finally, our students have become amazing advocates for Indigenous people by regularly marching through the community on Orange Shirt Day, the Moosehide Campaign Day, and on Murdered and Missing Indigenous Women, Girls, and Two Spirits Day.
The third objective focuses more on our staff and their learning and understanding of the impact that colonialism and intergenerational trauma has had on Indigenous peoples. We can honestly say that we are so proud of our staff as we witness them walk their journey towards truth and reconciliation. This year, we hosted and participated in the blanket exercise and large group sharing circle. We had several members from the Snuneymuxw community join us in this experience. Words cannot express the impact this exercise had on everyone involved. The learning was deep and the emotions were deeper. Holding the sharing circle built a deeper sense of belonging and connection within our staff. In addition, our staff participates in Hul'qumi'num 101 in an effort to build the language within the classroom on a daily basis. We're working hard to incorporate more Hul'qumi'num language into everyday communication. Our staff has also explored trauma-informed practice through the general and Indigenous lens. We learned about grief and loss from the Nanaimo Hospice Society, shared the wisdom of Gabor Mate about trauma, and participated in the District Implementation Day with Dr. Dustin Louie. These taught our staff to lead with our hearts with all of our students.
Final objective addresses the promotion of land and Hul'qumi'num language-based learning programs. You have already seen many examples of our land-based learning experiences, so we will focus more on the Hul'qumi'num language and Indigenous culture-based learning. Our primary classes visit the Shikuptut on a weekly basis to spend time with Miss Wilson. They learn Hul'qumi'num language, learn about Indigenous history, and happily engage in singing and drumming songs in Hul'qumi'num. Our intermediate classes attend weekly sessions with both Bob Wise to learn Hul'qumi'num language and monthly to hear stories and knowledge from Elder Lolly. In addition to the regular classes, Ms. Wilson and Mr. Wise host an intermediate Hulkaminam elective where all students are welcome to join for extra learning of the Hulkaminam language, songs, and drumming. This is a very popular elective and currently interests over 30 students. We also have something called Passion Hour every Thursday for all intermediate students. Teachers host different passion groups like art, chess, puzzle club, trivia, intramurals, etc. One of the options is always an Indigenous passion, which might be beading, drumming, or weaving. We purchased a large loom for our school last year, along with a few small looms, and the students love to learn how to weave. And finally, we often have special events such as the Northern Games, where students learned a variety of Indigenous games during their PE time, and then competed in them during intramurals.
To wrap things up, we cannot express how proud we are of our school community. Indigenous ways are becoming so embedded in our everyday life at Bayview. The staff and students embrace their learning and are committed in their journey in truth and reconciliation. We invite any of you to come on by for a visit and witness it for yourself. And another big HITSEPCA for inviting us this evening to brag about Bayview.
HITSEPCA. Oh, this is absolutely fantastic. Thank you for that presentation. So much that you're doing there. I'm going to go to Tom. He is the first on our list for questions.
Hi, Sue, and it's really nice to meet you both. Or, sorry, not to meet you both, but I haven't met the vice principal yet in person, so it's a real pleasure to meet you. I love going by Bayview. What I'm actually most amazed about after your presentation is how you managed to grow all that food on what is one of the smallest pieces of land that the school district owns. So good for you. You're a real message of urban farming. And if you can grow, if there's dirt there, you can grow food in it. I was actually wanted to follow up with you about the acquisition last year of the neighboring house. You know, it had been a real concern of ours as it became neglected and fell into disrepair. I was really happy to see the board be able to move in that direction. So what's that meant to the school, and how's the transition gone, and a little update? That's all I'm really looking for. Thanks a lot for all your work. I love going to Bayview.
Sure, we love having you.
Thank you.
So Jackie, did you want me to speak to that?
If you're comfortable going ahead with it, go right ahead, please do.
Sure.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah, so we were super excited to get the land that lives next door. The house is now gone, so it's an open piece of property. There were a few concepts that were put forward, and I know we've discussed them with our staff, and the one that we're most passionate about is another outdoor learning space there. And we'd like to move our gardens into that space as well. Because like you said, we've got our gardens on the side of Victoria Street with no...
And it's south, yeah.
Yeah, and it's actually not even on school property. It's on city property. So it'd be nice to have it on school property in a safer place. And then also have an outdoor learning space where our kids can spend more time outside.
That's fantastic. I just, you know, I was actually challenged by an outgoing trustee to try to figure out what Bayview does and bottle it, you know, and it's so I also remember being a teacher at Barsby for years. We always looked at Bayview as our source of community leaders. So I've been really impressed with this school for a long time. I'm glad to see it's in another set of really good hands. And thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments you could put in the chat? I'm more than okay to read them out. I'd like to take a moment to say thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic. I'm blown away by all the things that you're doing to honor and action truth and reconciliation, especially the calls to action 57. If I got the number right, I'm sorry, I think I just forgot the number, but yes, I think it's 57.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yay. That such a small but mighty school. It really is. Leanna Pellegrin says absolutely outstanding. I'm not quite sure what you tried to write after that. Absolutely outstanding presentation. I'm just going to say outstanding presentation is what you wrote.
Thank you.
Oh, we can't hear you. You're muted. Sorry, Leanna.
So sorry, you guys. I was trying to be fast so that I wouldn't have to come on screen and take up any of this precious time, but I can only see 2 words and I don't know what happened. So I very much apologize. There could be swear words. I have no idea what happened in the chat. I really hope it's okay. I loved the presentation, and Bayview is just forever inspiring. I've always loved visiting that school, even though I'm North Ender, and but I kind of wish I was a South Ender when you see all those beautiful community things down at Bayview. So you guys are doing excellent work, and yeah, just beautiful stuff. So much Halkominum, so much culture. We could all use more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. I can honestly say that Bayview has changed me, and it's become a massive part of my heart.
Fantastic. Naomi, you'd like to make a comment?
Thank you so much for all the work that you're doing towards reconciliation. And, you know, there's that Jerry Maguire phrase, you had me at hello. You guys had me at embedded. When you use the word embedded, like that's what we want. That's what the Indigenous way of knowing and being is. It's not a separate entity. It's not integrating. It's embedded in how we walk our path in life. And I just really appreciate all the work you're doing with Halkominum, but not, you know, with the plants in the outdoor garden and teaching them identifying plants. Like these kids are going to know more about plants than my generation certainly did, and have that appreciation and love for the environment in which they live in. So yeah, I raise my hands to you, Haichka.
Namakwa.
Tanya, commenting question.
Hey, Chika, I also raise my hands to you both. So good to see you, Sue and Sean. Thank you so much. Glad I had a minute to think how I wanted to word this question, because I've changed my mind on how I'm gonna ask it. What advice would you give to schools who are wanting to take the next steps in getting to where you are and increasing their embedded in their ability to get to this point of really embedding culture into their schools?
I've got two simple things. Take risks and don't be afraid. I think that a lot of, this was me before, just a lot of, without being a part of it and being a part of a community like this, people will tiptoe around how to do this. And it doesn't need to be that way. You just need to take those risks. It's okay to make the mistakes and learn from them, but take those risks and do it.
Thank you.
No follow-up question, Tanya? Okay. Lindsay, wow, that was truly inspiring. Sue and Sean, I really enjoyed hearing about the amazing things you are doing at Bayview. So from one VP to another.
Hi, Chat.
It's fantastic. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. That gives us a lot of uplifting hope for the future, and a lot of great examples of things people can take away to maybe perhaps do in their own situations. That's really fantastic. You're leading the way, and I appreciate it so much. All that you're doing for the children. That's really what we're here for, and they're going to be gaining so much more. Their education is going to be so much more enriched from what you're doing today. So thank you for taking the risk.
Okay.
It's okay. Thank you. So I believe we are going now to Laura. Okay. We're going to be doing the How Are We Doing report.
Thank you.
Number 8.1. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you again to Sue and Sean, and of course to Jackie for your support of our elementary schools. So next we'll be providing an overarching summary of the most recent, what's called the Aboriginal How Are We Doing report. And as you know, the ministry via the tripartite partners has agreed to utilize that word Aboriginal for this year, in case you're wondering, and then utilizing the term Indigenous moving forward. But the report currently is called the Aboriginal How Are We Doing report. So the ABHOD report is a ministry report generated that shares student data for students who self-identify as First Nations, either status or non-status, Métis and Inuit. So considerations when reviewing any data, but this is a lot of data. Just little reminders for us. It's really important that we use multiple sources of data, whether that's in comparison, triangulating data. It's always important to keep that in mind. It's also important to consider participation rates when looking at any kind of data. It's also important that we're cautious of data that represents perhaps a small number of students. The smaller the number, the more careful we need to be. And reviewing data trends is really important, and 5 years is generally a really good sort of marker in terms of the most reliable data, 5 years or more. So those are some of the things that it's really important that we keep in mind when we're reviewing any kind of data. So this is a large report. So with that in mind, for you this evening, we did two things. First, we sent the report to the board far in advance to allow time for some review. And second, we're providing you with this presentation where we're going to walk you through aspects of the report, and we've chosen to highlight certain data sets that we believe may be a bit more impactful or notable, if you will. Somewhat subjective on our part, but we've tried to break it down a little bit. The report is not necessarily, this report in particular, is not necessarily a good news report. Indigenous student success has much room for improvement. Although this is a complex task, it's one that we believe we can do much better. So with this in mind, I'll take the opportunity to say that the success of our Indigenous students is the responsibility of everyone, not the Indigenous Learning Team in isolation, just to be clear. So the data in this report, district data, and the direction of the board's strategic plan will inform the operational plans moving forward. So I want to ensure I mentioned that. So the presentation will take what we're calling a here's what, so what, now what approach. So here's what, we'll show you a graph that has some data on it. We'll put the graph on the screen for you, and that's the here's what. So what will be a so what, explain the data and what it might mean to us. And the now what, we'll share a little bit where we can around what's currently happening in this regard, or what we, strategies we currently have in place to address this particular information. And we may give a nod to future planning as well, and maybe some potential strategies for moving forward. So that's how it's going to lay out. Every slide is going to have a graph of information. It's going to be a here's what. Our speakers will speak to the so what and the now what. And after we sort of get through all of that information, we will welcome, of course, questions and comments. I think it's just to make things a little easier, maybe to streamline the process a little bit, is if you're going to ask a question about a specific data set, if you could please reference the page number of the Aboriginal HOD report itself, so that staff can quickly reference the data that you might be commenting on. So not the agenda page number, but the Aboriginal HOD report number. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage Assistant Superintendent Dodd Balcom and our newest District Vice Principal of Indigenous Learning, Emily Magyar. Emily has graciously stepped into this role in our time of need, and we have thrown to the lions immediately. So we're inviting both Dawn and Emily to the on the screen to share the information with you.
Thank you so much, Laura. Am I sharing my screen all right? I flashed it up there while you're on there, so if people can see that, that's good. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. Emily and I are super excited to be here to be able to kind of go back and forth and share some information on the How Are We Doing report. The areas that we have pulled out of the report, it's about a 60-page report, and as Laura mentioned, there's a lot of different data points for you. We wanted to talk about FSA results. We want to talk about specific secondary courses, so there's a whole bunch of courses listed there. We're going to highlight some of them and talk about why we think they're important ones for us to monitor our success of our Indigenous students and how they impact graduation rates. We're going to talk about transition rates as students transition from grade to grade to grade and then into graduation and completion. We're going to talk about graduation rates as well as adult dogwood graduation rates with some specific attention paid to our on-reserve graduation rates. We're going to talk a little bit about post-secondary transition rates and then finish off, the HOD report finishes off with some student learning survey data, which helps complement the other data that we have throughout. So as Laura mentioned, the report or the slides that we're showing are going to share the pages that they're on in the HOD report, because we had the slides started prior to your agenda package going out. So I notice when I look at your agenda package, I see the big number is your agenda package number, and then the small number is the number of the HOD report kind of hidden underneath that. So when we get to questions, if you're jotting down a slide that you have there, just make a note of the HOD report, and Emily and I have that handy as well so that we can flip to those pages so that we can respond in a mindful way. So if we're ready to get going, Emily, you good to go? Awesome.
Ready.
Emily's super excited. This is her first presentation with trustees, and so she's prepared and prepared and prepared, and we just keep telling her, don't worry, it's so much fun to engage back and forth. So I'm looking forward to sharing this with you, Emily.
Thank you.
So as Laura mentioned, not all of our data is a good news story, but not all of it is surprising either, because this has been something that the district has had a strong commitment to working on for a number of years. So we're going to start off with the HOD report, and we just pulled stuff out sequentially. So we didn't jump around in the HOD report. So we pulled out stuff that was relevant from the beginning of the HOD report right through in the sequence that it gets presented to us. So the FSA is the first part, and it's on pages 11 through 14. And the FSA
Point of order. I'm really sorry. Sorry, Chair. I'm hoping to get the text a little bigger. I don't know if that's a possibility.
Yes. Thank
but
you.
I'm really sorry, Dawn.
I can
Are
try.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
If I'm asking too much, I'm sorry. These old eyes remind me.
No, I hear you, and I know when we were putting them on the slides, when you grab the information, it doesn't come up super large. So,
thank you.
Is that doable?
That does it, Dawn. Thank you very much.
So we're gonna hopefully go with that on the graphics, and if it's not, we'll try to blow it up as we go through.
Thank you, Chair.
So with our FSA data, this is not the first data that we get on our learners. We have our Ready to K, Welcome to K information. We have our early development instrument that we use, but this is the first piece of information that the How Are We Doing report provides to us. And so our students do FSAs in grade 4 and grade 7 in reading and writing and numeracy. And the overall observation that we have is that the percentage of students who are emerging, that's the red part there, is significantly higher for our Indigenous learners than it is for our non-Indigenous learners. And so this is the first piece of data where we say, what are we doing to support our learners if the FSA results are not as high in the developing or on track or extending results as possible. So throughout the report, Emily and I are going to kind of bounce back and forth, and Emily's going to be talking about what staff do to learn more about our learners. So when the here's what is, here's the results, they're not great, so what? So that tells us that we need to have attention on our students around FSA's results and what the FSA assessment is providing. And then now what are we doing about that is how are we making sure that we learn more about our learners and what supports do we put in place? So I'll turn it over to Emily.
Yeah, thank you, Dawn. There's just a few things I wanted to make a point on when we look at these FSA results, and I just couldn't help but think as I looked at this that, we talk about, literacy and numeracy and learning being a byproduct of connection, and I feel like, we see we see a lot of kids not represented in these numbers, right? And those kids weren't feeling the connection. And I feel like, you know, these tests too they're quite a colonial tool, right? We're kind of not using the tool that we're trying to implement in the classroom. And I think that, I mean, it shows some positive things. Some numeracy things are up, right? We have some work to do, literacy is up and numeracy is still posing a lot of challenges. We see that all the way through, right? For grade 7, grade 10, and going forward. I think some things that we're doing is we've been, you know, over the last little bit trying to really intentionally increase our ICSSW, so that's our Indigenous Cultural and Student Support Worker. We know that they're often the first real relationship connection for Indigenous students in the school. And I think like all of our work around creating that collective responsibility with classroom teacher, administrators, you know, other staff members, it's such a teamwork to raise these kids, and these are our COVID babies as well, right? Coming in, and they need so much love and connection and care. And I think, you know, another piece that I think when I look at this is just that family piece that's missing. You know, when we get our families connected, our kids are connected, and then, you know, they're doing better in these spots.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily.
Thank you.
Okay, as I apologize as I advance the slides, it's probably going to take a little bit of work to get things squared out with a larger size, but we're good to go. So next up in our data set are our course marks. And so we have selected Science 10 as well as our math at the grade 10 level, as well as our English First Peoples 10 and English First Peoples 12 data as ones to focus on and share with you today. So Science 10 is one of the courses, as you know, the graduation program begins at grade 10. So grade 10, 11, and 12 students earn credits, up to 80 credits to get to graduation. And Science 10 has long been identified as a course that is heavy in content and often a barrier for students, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, on their pathway to graduation. So sometimes it's the first stumbling block that students experience. So tracking and monitoring students' success, both in the course, but also their engagement in the course and what supports they seek to be successful in the course is an important piece for us. So the HOD report provides a percentage of students that are getting a C+ or better, as well as a B or better. And we often hear from students and families that when they say, I just want my student to be happy and be okay. And often getting a C+ in a course is a pretty healthy indicator of I'm doing okay. So if you go down and see students in the hallway and you're, hey, what course are you taking? And they're like, I've got Science 10 this semester. How are you doing? And they say, I'm doing okay. Usually if I say, well, what mark are you getting? Usually it's a C+ or better. So C+ or better is a good indicator students are going to be okay. Students who receive a C+ or better usually go on at the next grade level and also see success. So for this piece of information on Science 10 in particular, we're looking to say, where's the discrepancy between our students who are Indigenous versus non-Indigenous being okay? And you can see that roughly 48 to 54% in the last several years of our Indigenous students receiving a C+ or better, whereas our non-Indigenous students, it's 70 to 75%. So there's a gap there that we want to address and provide additional supports for students around Science 10. Emily, do you want to talk a little bit about the work you've done with staff in working with students to identify which courses students struggle to engage with and seek support outside of the class?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Don. You know, I worked at ND as an Indigenous education teacher for 6 years, and I probably have seen more crying and more tears over Science 10 than any other course. It's just, it's such a block in the way, right? And it really creates a lot of bad feelings, and kids feel frustrated a lot of the time. I think in speaking with my colleagues that are working at the secondary level, it's such a challenge. It has such a big chemistry portion, right, to Science 10. And I think I mean, we just need to problem solve what is happening in the classrooms, you know, rather than trying to like band-aid the problem afterward. What can we be really intentionally creating in those science and math classrooms that keep kids there, right? Even though it's hard, because it is hard and we can't make that really any easier. But what can we do about our environments that are making it feel doable for students? So I don't have the answer. I just know I know that we're really, really aware of it, and you know, we're always looking for new creative ways.
Thanks. And just before we move on to the next grade level, I'm going to talk a little bit about some supports. Obviously, the supports that Emily talked about, students focusing in on Science 10. Math is another course that students often struggle to engage with and feel like additional supports would be in place, both for Foundations of Math Pre-Calculus and for Workplace Math. But there's also work that we're doing with teachers to try to engage with them around ways that they can be different in the classroom for our learners, and not just for our Indigenous learners, but for all of our learners. So we have 2 working groups that are meeting regularly this spring, and some of these working groups will continue into next year. One of them is around what's referred to as insufficient evidence. So we know that not all students enter the beginning of a course with the full requisite skills and competencies and life circumstances, some of it around attendance, to be successful in a course at the secondary level in a 5-month semestered course. So we know that some students just on the very first day are going to have a challenge getting through, even if everything aligns well for them. So the ministry has referred to the letter grade of insufficient evidence as an opportunity for schools to identify students who may benefit from some additional time at the end of the course. Instead of receiving a letter grade of a failing mark, they're allowed to receive an insufficient evidence mark, and then have up to 1 full calendar year for that student to complete the course without having to repeat it. So we have a working group that's getting together to identify, you know, how can you identify early in a course students who might benefit from some additional time, and then of course, how can we teach differently for those students, knowing that we're not going to end their learning experience in that course at the end of a semester, but we're planning for it to extend. Some students may extend for 2 or 3 weeks. Some students may extend for 2 or 3 months. So we're hoping that that's one way to help support students who are in a course that can be overwhelming. And at grade 10, Science 10 is an example, or Foundations of Math Pre-Calculus is an example where students might say, the course moves too fast and I just need more time. So there's that group. And then the other working group that we've pulled together is a working group just around assessment practices. So some students go into classrooms, and when you say, how do you feel in this class? And it's like, I just don't feel like this class is really for me, because the way that I like to learn and demonstrate my understanding doesn't really align with this course. This course requires a lot of paper and pencil, you know, listen and learn and write it out on a paper test. And so we're working with teachers to say, how can we support them to shift assessment practices that better align with students' learning preferences and ways of expressing their understanding. And so we know that those interventions are long-term ones that will take time to change practice, but we know that we need those supports in place if we're to move the percentage of students for Indigenous learners from the 40 to 50% getting a C+ or better to 75% or 80%. So I'm going to show you the next couple slides here. Oops, I think I might have, yeah. So our English First Peoples wanted to show you this one because you'll notice that the numbers went from, this is the number of students who took the course. So we went from 60 students back in 2021, 2022, when it was an option. So you could take English 10, had some different flavors, including English First Peoples 10, to last year, 2022, 2023, where all of our students across the district began to take English First Peoples 10. So the number shot up to roughly 400 students in that year. And we're moving on with our English First Peoples 12, which is all of our grade 12 students this year are taking it as part of their graduation requirement program. And it's one of the courses that teachers and students are really excited about, that students are feeling that there's better representation and they feel more, they see themselves reflected in the curriculum better. So we're excited about where that data is going to go over the next couple of years. We also know that those students from our FSA results back in grade 4 when this cohort was in grade 4. We can look at their results from grade 4 and then grade 7 and then say when they get to grade 10 and see if our literacy strategies and supports that we have throughout the elementary system and into secondary programs are also working, and if not, what more can we do to help them be successful? Our English First Peoples 12, showing you this slide only because we had a small number that were writing it in 2022-23, and then that number is going to skyrocket when we get our HOD report next year, as all of our students are doing English First Peoples. The 2 courses I'm going to show you around math are the Foundations of Math Pre-Calculus 10, which is the course that many parents and students talk about when if they say, I want to go to post-secondary. Many of them for math, they say, I need to take pre-calculus 10 and pre-calculus 11 as part of my requirements. They're not required to go to post-secondary, but they are required for many programs at post-secondary. So students who say, I want all my doors or all my options open for me, want to be successful in Foundations of Math Pre-Calculus. And so as a system, we want to ensure that all of our students are prepared to be successful on that path if that's what they want to choose. And you can see again the gap between our Indigenous learners of roughly 40 to 60% of students earning a C+ or better in Foundations of Math Pre-Calculus versus the roughly 70% or higher for our non-Indigenous learners. So there's a support that we know we need to put in place for our Indigenous learners if we're there to keep those options open for them as they go through. One last slide on courses before we move on to our next section, and this is just a number of students who are taking language courses. And so you can see our course count has been fairly steady for our students. And so one of the things that we're talking about is, can we offer students more opportunities to experience language with more broader across the system, but also can we allow those students who want to take successive courses in Hulkaminum to go deeper with that? And of course we have beautiful language teachers, so it's a matter of can we maximize those language teachers' opportunities with students. Transition rates is a really interesting one in the HOD, and it's one of the ones that's when you look at it, it tells a bit of a false narrative, because you'll see the results here. If you look at our grade 8 for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, all of our students transition from grade 8 to grade 9. 98% to 99% transition from grade 9 to grade 10, super high percentage from grade 10 to grade 11, still a high percentage from grade 11 to grade 12, and then from grade 12, you'll see for our Indigenous learners from grade 12 to graduation completion, it goes from 90% to 73%. And it's a question of, well, why is our transition rate so high all the way up until we get to grade 12 to graduation? And so when we look at the HOD report, we tend not to look at this transition data as being the important transition data. And here's why we don't look at this as being super important, because to transition from grade 10 to grade 11, all you have to do is be on track in earning credits to get to the minimum of 80 by the time you're in grade 12. So you can be unsuccessful in a course or 2 courses in grade 10 and still be counted as a transition from grade 10 to 11. Likewise, transitioning from grade 11 to grade 12, all you have to do is be on track and make it possible to graduate at the following year in grade 12. So often students who are really at risk of not being successful in completing their schooling to graduation count in the grade to grade transition rate. So this is not a tool that is super informative for us. So instead, I'm going to let Emily talk about a mechanism that we track for student success. It's a much better gauge for our confidence in students being successful as they transition from grade to grade to school completion.
Yeah, so I can't remember how many years it's been since we started doing this. And I remember as the teacher being like, oh man, another list of things to do. So we take all of our Indigenous students, K to 12, and we place them as a red, a yellow, or a green. And we do this in both October and March of every year for K to 11. And like, I guess the short story is just like Red, are we really worried about this kid? Do we need to fully wrap around this child? Is this kid on track to graduate or be successful after school? Yellow, what are we worried about, right? Are those kids that hang out in the yellow? They don't usually hang out there very long. Our kids are either, you know, they're green, they're connected, they have good relationships at school and at home, or they're red and we're really worried about them. So we usually go through, and just as a school team, it's such a great exercise to really become aware, and also just to make it everybody's job, right? To make sure that we're moving kids from red or yellow back into green. So, you know, I find that information is much more useful than knowing if a kid was, you know, put from grade 9 to 10 or 10 to 11. Yeah. All I want to.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily. Yeah, it's much like we know that that our grade 7s transitioning to grade 8. Numerically, they're all coming from grade 7 to grade 8, but Emily and her staff are tracking a red, yellow, green for every single grade 7 student coming into grade 8. And so that transition information coming in is so informative for those teams that are receiving those students brand new to a secondary school, to be able to say, okay, who's in the green, who's coming in where there's high confidence that they're going to have a successful year, and who's in the red, and what supports do we need to put in place to ensure that in grade 8 and 9 they head into that graduation program, in grade 10 in the green, with us having high confidence they're going to graduate. So our red, yellow, green, it is an exercise, but it's one that is super valuable in informing our practices. So
absolutely.
Okay. Completion rate. So the How Are We Doing report provides some information on 5-year completion rates, as well as 6, 7, and 8-year completion rates. And so I'm sharing some slides on 5-year completion rates, and I'll share a bit of information about other rates as well. So our 5-year completion rate for our Indigenous students, it has been 50s to 60%, while our non-Indigenous students have been in the 80s. So there's a gap there that is our graduation gap that we want to address on a regular basis. One of the things that we feel quite happy about, not around the 5-year graduation rates, but around our 6, 7, and 8-year graduation rates. So we go from 57% last year for a 5-year graduation rate to students who graduated within 6 years at 73%, and within 7 years and 8 years up to 84%. So like we talked about earlier about some students needing some additional time to be successful in our course, we feel very strongly that our schools are working to do everything they can to have a plan in place for students who are not successful after 5 years to come back for a year 6 and be successful then, and even if it takes a 7th year or an 8th year. So we're happy that we continue to increase at a good rate for students who do a year 6, a year 7, or a year 8. But we obviously want to close the gap so that more students entering in grade 8 complete in their first 5 years of secondary opportunities. Oops. So this report, these next few slides are ones not available in the HOD report, but I wanted to take the 5-year HOD report one and update stuff that's off of the another report that the ministry makes available to us. So this is all of our resident students, and you can see we've gone from 73% back in 2017 up to the higher 70s and 75%. And when we look at our Indigenous students, our completion rates have gone stayed in the 50s, 40s, 50s, 40s, 50s. And when we look at our Indigenous on-reserve students, and you can see here some of this data is masked because there's a small number of students who are on reserve, and Laura cautioned that when there's a small cohort you're looking at, the variability in the results from year to year tends to swing more, right? A really large number of students, it moves up like 1% at a time or down, whereas a small group, it's variable. But you can see some very concerning numbers for our Indigenous on-reserve students. 27, 35, 51, 23, 17%. So there's a huge vulnerability factor for our students who are living on reserve, and a need for us, all of our schools, to ensure that we have strategies and supports in place to address all of their needs holistically and not just narrowly course by course. So Emily, do you want to talk about some of the things that have been done recently in our plans going forward?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, you know, like Laura was saying, you know, we have like a small number relatively, right, that are on reserve in grade 12. And so like getting one, right, to draw back in is a huge success, right? It really sways everything. I think what I can say really confidently is that I know that when we intentionally undertake an intervention to really reconnect with an Indigenous grade 12 living on reserve, we're almost always successful, right? So just having those resources to make sure that we're really we're taking someone that already has a relationship with that student and we're reconnecting them. I find, you know, I read through the non-grad report for on reserve students from last year, and I just got lost in all these stories, right? And all these like gorgeous kids, and you see their face, and you know, you see kind of the challenges that they faced, and it's not a new thing, right? Not new to grade 12. It's been a pattern of just like some disconnection and reconnection, and you know, like you say, sometimes it just takes longer. I know for myself as a high school student, it took me a year longer. I wasn't ready yet when my grad year came, and I think like our kids are going to be just fine, right? We just need to make sure that we're giving them everything we've got. And I think some of those things we're so focused on outreach, right? And having like a real human being make physical contact with that kid and lay eyes on them and sit on their lawn and have a coffee and talk about what they need. And those things are just really powerful in terms of reconnecting our kids.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Emily.
could I just point, I'm not even sure what I'm supposed to say here, but what page is that on?
So these slides are from the Ministry Enhancing Student Learning Report, the Ministry site. So I just wanted to share that because it was not data that was in the HOD report, but I wanted to share that with the trustees today.
Thank you. We're going to get access to these slides, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Awesome. Adult Dogwood Diploma is both a good news and a cause for concern result. So we champion every student who successfully walks the stage with a dogwood or adult dogwood, and we're super interested in the story. So you know, if you've connected with as Emily said, some students who have reconnected with the school system, they may have been disengaged from the system for a year or two, sometimes a 3 or 4 year gap in their schooling from kindergarten through to grade 12. And they get to 18 and 19 years old, and the pathway to get to 80 credits is a really, really long one. And so the adult dogwood is absolutely the appropriate school completion for them, and it opens up lots of opportunities in life for them. Much of the work that Learning Alternative staff have done in the last several years has been increasing the number of students who have successfully completed, and that does include a percentage of students with an adult dogwood. The concerning piece is our graduation rates have increased. The area where we've seen the most growth in the last 5 years has been in our adult dogwood. So that's the double-edged sword, right? It's really good that we're having more success in getting more of our students at 18 and 19 and 20 years old to re-engage with their schooling and have an adult dogwood. The concerning piece is the now what? What can we do differently for students so that they don't get off track and arrive at 18 or 19 years old with so few credits towards graduation, so that the pathway is a year 6 or year 7, you're going to get your 80 credits and complete your regular dogwood. So that's the kind of both we champion every student who graduates, but we also have those wonders. What can we do differently? More interventions and supports earlier for the next group of students coming up. I don't know, Emily, if you wanted to add anything on that.
No, I think I just to reiterate, you know, I've been having a lot of conversations with our secondary teams and our Indigenous staff, and just trying to get more of the story, right? Like, how are kids ending up here, and you know, what can we just want to make sure that an adult dogwood doesn't mean less connection, right? So just as long as those two things go together, you know, just want to make sure we're doing that.
Awesome, thank you. Last couple slides, just post-secondary transition. So I just wanted to share one slide because one of the things that we're quite happy about is with our Indigenous and our non-Indigenous students is that we have a good immediate transition to post-secondary, but we also have a good transition 1 year delayed, which means students finish their schooling and they take a year off. Often to work and save money so they can afford post-secondary. And then also not in the HOD report, but we have had other reports that have shown that sometimes our 2 year and our 3 year delay when it's not mass data is also, we have a high percentage of students who are engaging in post-secondary. So that speaks to the strong relationship piece that our students have with their adults in the building that believe they're going to be successful in life, and the believing that their learning doesn't stop when they complete high school, that they can go on to post-secondary. So just wanted to share that bit of information. And then finally, our student learning surveys, and there's a lot of questions in the student learning survey, and I only shared one slide in our presentation just because I wanted to let you know that when we look at our student learning surveys and we look at things like, do you have a sense of belonging? Do you have adults who feel, who believe in you? Do you like school? Often we look at data that kind of parallel. So if there's a gap between our Indigenous and non-Indigenous learners, is that a similar gap to what we're seeing in FSA results or in our Science 10 results? So often they do line up, right? We can look and say, yeah, this information we're getting from the student learning surveys is information that we either know anecdotally or through other data points as well to let us know. So we just wanted to share one slide from the learning survey before we wrap up our presentation part. And so I'll stop sharing here in a second and we'll take your questions and comments. And as mentioned at the beginning, if you have a slide that you would like us to talk to that isn't a part of the presentation, if you can look in your notes at the HOD report, mention the page number, and then we'll be happy to dig up the HOD report and see if we can get to the right page for you for that as well.
Thank you very much. If anybody has any questions or comments, please put it in the chat or use the hand raise function. Mark, you are first up.
Thank you. I'll put my toe in the water. Thank you, Dawn and Emily and staff for putting together this report. It's pretty comprehensive. Takes a lot of time and effort to do that, and the presentation was great and outstanding. My question is about, I guess, keeping track. Do we track what other districts are doing in comparison to us? Say if we take a dip in graduation rates, do we look at other districts and say, oh, they're experiencing that too?
I wouldn't say that we necessarily go looking specifically at data. We definitely do share stories, right? So we don't say, have you taken a dip in your percentages kind of things. We would say something like, hey, this most recent cohort is one who really struggled. We often talk, especially post-pandemic, around attendance and who's re-engaged and who hasn't re-engaged. So it is definitely a provincial, well, we don't talk with lots of educators outside of the province, but it's a provincial conversation for sure, and sharing of strategies on what are you doing to re-engage students. And as Emily mentioned, some outreach with some of our on-reserve students and reconnecting them with a familiar face, somebody who they have a connection with, as a strategy that's worked for us. So I know she's shared that with other districts, and yeah, we definitely do reach out.
Sure, thanks. Just follow up, Chantal, if I may. Thanks, Dawn. I guess perhaps there might be some value in seeing what other districts are experiencing as we go up percentages, down percentages, to see whether or not the route is something that we are doing or is something that is province-wide. I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for that, or if that's a difficult set of data to acquire, Dawn.
There's not a formal way to do that necessarily. We do compare well, the ministry compares for us, our district compared to the provincial average. So we always have that one available to us. And then we always have the longitudinal data available to us. And as I mentioned, a 5-year span is pretty reliable. So we're looking at trends over time within our own district. And then we're looking at that same trends over time in comparison to the provincial average. We don't go district by district. There's so many differences and factors that would come into play to make that comparison useful or reliable. Now, having said that, we certainly have opportunities to meet, connect, share strategies overall for dealing with some of the same issues, but we might not compare our data directly.
Right. Super. Thanks, Laura.
Betcha.
And thank you, Emily and Don. Thank you very much.
So Mark, Naomi.
If you could see my desk right now, it is like Post-it notes, because I wrote down all the percents and things and looked at sort of patterns. Comment first. It's interesting, Emily, you talked about Science 10. Yeah, it is the nemesis of all students, really. It is a barrier for all students. This chemistry section is brutal. And I noticed that, like, that was where there, to me, a really glaring one. I think it's on page 38 of our thing, but page 23 was the difference of the C+ or better for Aboriginals, 48%, and it's 71 for non-Aboriginal. That's a significant gap. And that was one of my observations, but I have you touched on this one, which was kind of excited me, but I always remember an administrator I worked with who said that we need to think outside the box. And why does it have to be 5 years that a student graduates in, right? And Don, you addressed those percents that I noticed right away. In the 5-year, we're in the mid 50s, low 60s, right? And then you see 6 years, it goes up to 70. And by 8 years, we're in the 80%. I guess I have my first question is, I can't remember actually, is there a time frame of how long we can keep a student in the system?
No, not really. Like school age goes up to age 19, and then after age 19, they can become adult learners. So I think what you're touching on is some of the exciting work that we're trying to dig in with our working groups, which is how do we identify early what Plan B might be. So if instead of having a student go through grade K to 9 and then go grade 10, 11, and 12, finish at the end of the 5 years, being short of graduation. The plan A was let's get to a 5-year graduation. Plan B is what would it look like if it took 6 years, right? And planning for 6-year completion versus 5-year completion slows things down. It expands the time. It ensures that students are not feeling overwhelmed by the system. But it requires us to do things differently because currently, right, the system is designed to say, we'll get you through. Like everybody starts a course and finishes a course in the 5-month time in a semester, and we get everybody through in 5 years. And then when it doesn't, we think, oh, geez, we did our best, which people in the system really are doing their best. So yeah, it is identifying what were those things that made that jump from 57 to 73%, and could we be more thoughtful and plan for that so that we're setting students up for success as opposed to asking them to do something that we don't believe we can support them to be successful in that 5-year window.
Follow up, Chantel. Thanks for that answer. I appreciate that. I'm really excited to hear that you're looking at that as a plan B. I think that's wonderful. Yeah, because you mentioned the double-edged sword. Like right now we have free funding for upgrading with an adult dogwood. But that's only there because this recent government brought that back. Nations are not necessarily, they don't have a wealth of funds to fund upgrading and students that are going to post-secondary, which could very well happen again. We could lose that funding, right? So we've really got to think of those pieces so that we're preparing our students so that they can go right into programs as well. So the other piece is it's kind of twofold. I noticed that we just had this incredible presentation from Bayview. But in the statistics that we were given, it's quite fascinating to look at Aboriginal students talking about learning Aboriginal culture and history. The percent is relatively low, saying that they've learned so much. As a matter of fact, like I think grade 7 even was quite low. It might have been in the 30s, or but as it goes up to high school, it now reaches, like, I think grade 12, it's like 70% of students or whatever feel that they've learned a lot of Aboriginal content, culture, and history. Why do you think that's happening? Because I feel like the district is actually really, they're doing a lot at the elementary level. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I was very interested in that same kind of data point, and I think some of it might be we're doing a good job of embedding Indigenous ways of knowing and being into everything that's happening. And I think a grade 12 student, when they answer the survey question, they're like, it's happening all the time. And so they feel like they're learning more. Whereas maybe our younger students in grade 4 or grade 7 aren't, unless the teacher says, hey, we're learning a specific piece of Indigenous culture or language, maybe they don't realize all of those things that are happening, because you're very right. They're living and breathing in our schools. So that's the way I looked at that, because yeah, it's not like Bayview and our other elementary schools aren't fully immersed in embedding that experience. So that's my takeaway. But one of the beauties of the HOD report and other data points is it does raise good questions and makes us kind of dig in and wonder more about that. And so some of that might be going and having a conversation with some of those students and say, hey, what are you learning? And when they talk about what they're learning, we can go, oh, okay, it is happening more than what the data shares.
I agree. I just wanted to add, Naomi, like the question asks about, are you learning about Indigenous peoples? I just think of how literal our kids can be, right? Rather than really like seeing the kind of context that they're learning in. So, yeah.
I think the wording for particularly kids at the elementary level, whether it's truth and reconciliation, whether it's land-based learning, and if you read a question, the question is worded as, are you learning about First Peoples at school? At school, are you learning about Indigenous peoples? If they take that quite literally, right? The other thing is that you'd hope by grade 10, at least in our district, we looked at the numbers between the number of students that took English First Peoples 10 and then correlated that with that same student learning survey data, and they weren't correlated, which doesn't make any sense, because we know they took English First Peoples 10. So theoretically, after this year, that grade 12 data should say if near 100% of students, grade 12 students, took English First Peoples 12, then the correlating student learning survey should be near 100% of, we studied First Peoples or Indigenous peoples, right? So we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'll let Greg have a question now.
Greg, you are up.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff. Let me just start off by saying thank you for the presentation. And I think it's good for us to acknowledge that, this is an area that maybe more focus needs to be given. And I personally appreciate hearing about those areas so that we can, as a board, support you in any way that we can. And also, I heard Emily, part of your presentation, which sort of touched me, was the connection to students and making sure that they have connections to improve their chances of success. But my question, and I don't know if there's a single or simple answer to this, but this is good data and it's a data point. But what might we, how might we use this data from a board level in supporting staff to, I don't want to use the word better because staff are already doing fantastic work, but to try whatever the educators and professional staff think is the most effective means of supporting Indigenous students to improve their completion rates and their chance of success. So in other words, how do we oversee this as a board, and how do we support you in your roles as staff with this data?
Thank you. That's a great question, and probably multi-tiered, and I'll certainly open it up to my colleagues here to chip in, but I think the board being very clear on its vision and its goals and objectives, I think, is strategy number one. I think being very clear about that and being very clear about the metrics you want to see in regards to those goals and objectives. Having that clarity in black and white, understood and consistent over time is, I think, a really, really great way to support staff. And then I think having conversations like this, so asking those questions. So when we're looking at the board's goals and objectives, staff's responsibility is to operationalize those and, you know, let you know how we are operationalizing those. And then we come back together and look at the data to see whether those have made a difference. And so just being open for that process and asking those questions will have this iterative or reciprocal sort of relationship around this topic, and quite frankly, all of the topics that are embedded in your upcoming strategic plan. I'll pause there though, if Dawn or Emily, if you want to jump in.
I echo everything that Laura said. I think of you know, the board's commitment to truth and reconciliation, and reconciliation is an action, right? You do reconciliation. It's not something that you just you write in a document. So I think the trustees believing in reconciliation and making it part of what you do in each and every day, it empowers staff to engage in the difficult work, right? It empowers our educators, it empowers everybody in the system to say, this is important work. And yeah, we don't have all the answers or know all of the next steps, but I just feel like, as Laura said, putting it into the strategic plan, it gets operationalized and the work gets addressed. Like, I think that's the most important thing is just keep doing what you're doing.
I'll just add one little thing, Greg, is when you asked that question, I just felt like I got all excited because it just makes me so happy when you hear someone go like, hey, what can we do, right? And it just makes us feel a little less alone, right? A little bit more part of a team. And so thank you.
Thank you. May I have a follow-up, Chair? So thank you for the responses. Maybe my follow-up might be, happy to see that we're getting closer on our strategic plan, and hopefully we'll have some good objectives and metrics and policies, goals, vision, and whatnot that will help staff operationalize the strategic plan. Is there anything that staff see from this data that might support, trying different ideas, or, how do you see, or maybe I'll rephrase that, is there sort of a staff strategy that differs from what we're doing now, perhaps, or maybe not, based on this new information?
Great question again. You're on fire. So let's take, for example, the on-reserve graduation rate. That is an extremely saddening and unfortunate piece of data that we can't ignore. So I think, well, I'll also pause before I continue and interrupt myself, is we're at that stage now, we're in this sort of great position where we have some of this data. We have the upcoming, we're waiting for this upcoming board strategic plan and looking to align operational plan strategies, actions with that. So right now it's somewhat conjecture, but I will, assure you that we are taking this data very seriously, which is why we chose to bring this report forth now and go into it in so much depth and provide it ahead of time so we could really have a depthful conversation. But the on-reserve grad rate is certainly something that we want to focus energies on, and the overall grad rate or completion rates overall. And I think since COVID, you know, we hate to keep bringing that up, but since COVID, there have been some students, Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal, that have never ever come back. They've not reconnected. They're of school age, and you know, there's so much complexities in our schools right now that that added layer has been very challenging. And so looking at ways to grow potentially outreach and making those connections, and when Emily speaks to having hopefully people that those kids either already know or people in the right positions and have the right dispositions to connect and build relationships not only with the student but with their family, and have the opportunity to build that relationship over time, and have it not be a requirement that that student be in school from 8:30 to 2:30 every day, because that's just not going to work, for example. Another example is the Science 10 has been something that we have been maybe subtly aware of, and that's been a bit haunting over time, but we're honing in on it. And when Dawn spoke earlier about two initiatives that have just started based around a lot of this data, one around assessment and the other around IE, which I always forget what that stands for, Dawn.
Insufficient evidence.
Thank you. Those are very much in response to the course information that we have here, not only for Indigenous students, but the Indigenous students, the data in the HOD report just really exacerbates, you know, issues that we see that may be district-wide for all students. You'll see it weigh much heavier with Indigenous students, right? So looking at those two initiatives, and that's district-wide with all secondary schools, building beautiful systems and structures, and challenging, quite honestly, challenging traditional approaches and the status quo, and knowing that we need to do things differently. That's in direct relation to the secondary achievement rates or success rates.
Thank you very much. I look forward to seeing sort of how this gets operationalized, and then hopefully we'll see some results over time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tom, you are next.
Thank you, Chantal. Welcome, Emily and Laura. I got to mention before I get into my question, the conversation that you had around, you know, math anxiety and the analogy to maybe reconciliation anxiety and trying to get people passionate about these topics. Very difficult to teach things when we're not quite passionate about them, right? I've brought that up in a few contexts since we've had that exchange. What I wanted to kind of question from the balcony, because this is really interesting as an educator, but sitting on the balcony, I see kind of two things happening, and I'm wondering if they're meshing okay. We've had it, and I see it kind of articulated in the numbers in the First Nations 10, I think, that we have already, because we went from having a cohort of 60 kids take it, and then all of a sudden we had 400 kids take it. And of course, that's advancing our policy of trying to get this material in front of all kids and all Canadians, and that's to be lauded. But my question is, do we risk at the same time losing those safe, supported spaces where we were using specific curriculum to appeal to learners who were struggling? I guess my first question might be, is prior to English 12 First Nations going, First Peoples going large, was the demographic of students taking it largely Aboriginal? Or would that be an erroneous assumption on my part?
I don't have the exact kind of percentage of that, but I would say it would be a majority of Indigenous students. So it might be 70% Indigenous and 30% non-Indigenous. It wasn't all Indigenous, but definitely higher than our general population. Yeah,
and that's what I used to see too. So I just wanted to confirm that with you. So I'm wondering, are we able to still create that safe environment that may have made those 70% of those 60 Aboriginal kids feel really safe and secure in a curriculum that was connected to them in their lives, at least in a general sense? And now that we bring it out to a whole department and we try to get 8 different English teachers to teach it, and they're maybe mixed in with classes, and now they're in classes where they are not holding space as Indigenous kids in the majority anymore. Does that dynamic play into the challenge of going from a supported, caring microsystem where you're right, we can swing our numbers with 2 or 3 approaches, 2 or 3 successful kids can swing our numbers if we care about data, but you know, do you know what I'm questioning here?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah,
are we
yeah.
able to still provide that caring environment as we move to a larger system? And thank you for patience with my question.
No, it's a very good question, and I'll start off, and maybe others can jump in. I know when we were doing our training sessions for our EFP 10 and 12 teachers, and provincially when the shift was happening, that was one of the main concerns for teachers was how do I create a safe space for my Indigenous students when they've gone from what they may have had a sibling who went through and did a course earlier where there was a majority of Indigenous students in that class to one where all students are there. And man, our teachers struggled with that, and I think they've been very intentional about making sure it is a safe and welcome and supportive place. I remember those conversations with teachers, agonizing over that, saying I don't want to be engaging in some content or some curriculum or some discussion in my class and have an Indigenous student feel uncomfortable in this space at all. So I know that was top of mind right from day one, but I'll maybe let Emily share as well.
I don't have any kind of scientific answer to this topic, just that the people I know that are teaching EFP right now, they're so intentional about their environment. Like, yes, the content and all the stuff they're learning, but the environment is so top of mind every single day. And I think, I mean, the good news is we're creating those environments and those inclusive environments for Indigenous students to feel like, you know, it's their space in many other areas as well in the school. And so I feel like, you know, EFP is awesome. And I'm glad that, you know, I'm glad that we can provide those kind of environments in other areas in the school as well.
I'll just comment that is a really good question, Tom. And one that, you know, we don't have a clear, well, like as Emily said, a scientific, we don't have any data around that, but that is a really good question. I personally, I don't have an answer to. I mean, I think logic would tell me that it would be more difficult when we sort of standardize or when we kind of broaden out our reach from a more intimate, right, class where perhaps the percentage of Indigenous students in that maybe one block for the whole year, there might have been a higher number of Indigenous students in the class, and maybe it felt different. And so I can see how, you know, growing that out and broadening its reach definitely would have some challenges or stumbling blocks, I think, along the way. We know that there's pushback on, we know that racism exists, and we know that racism exists in adults and students, and they're in those, you know, some of those students who may hold some of those beliefs or understandings. They're present in all of our schools, and now they are in those classes where English First Peoples 10, English First Peoples 12 is being taught and being prioritized. But that's a really good question, right? That's a good question. I think that we probably won't want to dig in around. And I know that Don, Emily, and others have been working consistently with those teachers who provide those courses and bring them together and support them around, you know, content delivery as well as classroom environment, et cetera. So maybe that's something we can inquire about.
Thank you, Chantal. If I can make a quick follow-up, just to thank you for the great answers, and I think that's, you said great question tonight a lot, and I think it's a mood that's been set by your leadership and the way our meetings are being run, and I really appreciate it. So thank you for listening. And yeah, bringing a bad news report is not an easy thing to do, but we're on your team, and we're gonna get those numbers up.
Tom. Next is Naomi.
Just like a quick observation before I ask my question. Yeah, I noticed something that was an interesting trend as well, is when the questions around student safety, do you feel safe at school? The one or do you have 2 or more adults, you know, do you like school? It's interesting how in like grade 4, grade 7, grade 10, the numbers are fairly low. Kind of reflects that. I think I was looking at it going, well, that's just strange. Because in grade 12, do you have 2 or more adults? You know, we're doing a good job, you guys. Our staff are, because the Aboriginal, non-Aboriginal was the same percent, 80%
Mhm.
feel that they have that support. That's a significant number. That's really something to be proud of. And that's testimony to, you know, the efforts of our whole district, you know, to really make students feel safe. So I want to just go back to the IE, the insufficient evidence. And I want to ask this question around that. How, I guess my question is, by doing the IE, because we've talked about thinking outside the box, looking at the 6, 7, 8-year plan. By doing the IE, how does that work when our classes are semestered and little Johnny gets an IE in Science 10 and is to move on? How are we to support that student without creating additional workload? How does that work with union contracts, the number of students they can be supporting, etc.? How are we envisioning that?
I'm going to say great question, because that's the theme of the day, and that is a great question, and I don't have an answer for that yet, although I have lots of thoughts in my mind. But the working group that is coming together, we're actually meeting tomorrow morning. That's one of the technical challenges we're coming up with, right? So the example I've given with that working group is, and I use Science 10 as the example. I said, imagine you have a Science 10 teacher who's teaching September to the end of January, and then they're physically not even in the building second semester. They're working at a different school, right? So they're not available. They cannot be part of the plan at the end of the first semester because they physically are not there. And so that's the technical piece, is what do we do? So part of the solution is going to be, what is that teacher going to do differently for them with that student during the time that they have them? So how am I going to teach differently, knowing that my plan for the student is to get them through in 6 months, 7 months, 8 months instead of 5? So I've got a doable task. So instead of saying, I'll do my best, but I don't think they're going to make it after 5 months, it's like, I need to do things differently. So there's one piece that the classroom teacher can be involved in. We really want, is that working group, to have the classroom teacher own the success story for that student, so that they can say, I feel confident that the plan that we have in place as a school for the student is going to be a success story for the student, even though I won't be here when it finishes, because it's going to go beyond the 5 months I have with them. So there's that piece of adaptive change within the classroom for the classroom teacher. And then there's the technical piece of that has popped up with that working group. Physically, where are they going to do that? Who's going to be involved? Is it going to be inclusion support teachers? Is it an outreach teacher? Is there a role for the counselor? Is there like, who's going to be doing all those things? And what's going to happen for that student in the second semester? So they have teachers in second semester as well. So what's the role for me if I'm teaching a student who is part of extending their program? Am I in a course where maybe instead of them spending 120 hours with me to earn a B, or an A, maybe they spend 110 hours with me to get a slightly lower mark, but overall it's better for their plan. So I might have a role to play with that student who comes out of my class because they're doing a completion of a course that was hangover from first semester. So I'm reducing the expectations in my class. So it's a holistic approach to do that. And a lot of it is doing things technically different within the school, but it's going to feel really good when the adults are saying, I'm part of a success plan, as opposed to we're doing our best, but it may not end in a success, which is our current experience for lots of our staff, right? They do their darndest and they try their hardest, and the system is not built for those students. So we're going to change those things. So I don't have an answer yet, but we're working on it.
Thank you so much, because yeah, you know, we know how hard our staff work to try to support students, but there's a lot of some obvious and some not so obvious factors that play into the lives of our children that are a little bit out of our hands. But as Emily explained, you know, it's making that contact. And I loved what you said about, you know, learning the story of these students, because the story, that qualitative data is really important. Thank you very much, you guys. This was really comprehensive, and I never really considered myself a data person, but I actually enjoyed analyzing this and looking at some of these themes and trends. And I'm really excited to hear all the work and the brainstorming that's going on, because we've done a really good job with one aspect of reconciliation, and we've been working hard with the other, but that other one, we just still need to keep forging ahead. And I really appreciate your work and your time. Thank you.
Naomi. Tanya.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to the Deputy Superintendent, Acting Superintendent, sorry, Laura. To Laura, anyway.
I know who
Laura,
you mean.
you spoke about COVID, and I think it's important that we keep talking about how that's impacted us and how we're still feeling those reverberations of it. Now, you mentioned that we have some kids that we just haven't really gotten back. I guess I have a two-part question. Those numbers, have they gone down since we're at 2024 now? So have we got some of them back? Where are we at in that sense?
I don't have those numbers for you, but anecdotally, we've been getting information via some of our outreach support workers through Indigenous Learning as well. And we are absolutely getting those kids connected back to school. Yeah. So some of those efforts are working. We don't have enough of them. And I think that's the job of the folks on the screen and the rest of learning services to sort of figure that out.
And if I might have a follow-up, Chair, what do we see as the barriers for the kids that we haven't gotten back yet? What do we see as the barriers to that's causing them to correlating to them not coming back?
I mean, we could probably together, the three of us, probably just create a really, really big list. We've got everything from maybe some mental health issues with anxiety, and that anxiety, with COVID allowed many of us, children, youth, and adults, to maybe feel like we can support that anxiety by not interacting out there in the world and being with other people. And so that might have grown over time. Of course, we've got kids with complex trauma in their lives, and that, again, likely impacting their mental health and their well-being. There are lots of situations where children and youth have home situations where there's things happening that are completely out of their control, and that prevents them from making those connections. I mean, we can go on, Emily and Dawn, we could go on. Is there,
okay. I'm just wondering, and the reason I bring it up is I wonder if there's any of them that we can mitigate, if there's any of them that are like outside forces. But like, for example, I know one, this is again purely anecdotal, a family who has been reluctant to come back because they don't believe that the ministry has given us enough around the air stuff, because they're a family with complex immunity issues and are concerned about transmission and et cetera. And if that is still an issue for people, should we be bringing that to the ministry's attention, depending on what those numbers are, kind of thing? And because I've heard that also from people on staff who are still a little nervous because of either themselves or family members who have complex immunity issues and are still concerned about this virus, because it still exists, and it's still, although it's getting weaker, if you have serious health concerns, it can kill you. It killed someone I love. There are complications from it.
Right. Sorry about that. The thing that I'll comment on there is our district has sort of, at least to a certain degree, a variety of ways that students and school-aged children and youth can interact with our curriculum, whether it be online or part-time or physically in a building or not, right? So we hope that through our connection work or outreach work that we can find a way, or maybe cobbling together a few different ways to make it work for all of them, including, an extreme case where illness and germs and all those sorts of things are a big barrier for that.
So in other words, just continued communication with the family and building a relationship. But okay, I appreciate hearing that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Guess no follow-up, right, Tanya? That was your follow-up, maybe. Mark, you are next.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, to staff. I'm not sure who can answer this. It's a bit of a technical question. When we're talking about cohorts, and I was thinking about what Don was discussing about the adult dogwood, if someone takes an extra year to complete school, do they stay in their original cohort or do they get bumped to the next cohort statistically?
That's a good question. I think it depends on which data set the ministry is pulling. And I know when we talk with IT, they often ask that question. So they'll ask a question when I ask them, give me all the students who have successfully completed Science 10 on their second time through. I know that that cohort are students that are in grade 11 or in grade 12. If I say, give me all the students who successfully completed Science 10 on their first time through, some of those IT will say, are you counting just the students who are currently in grade 10 or the students who are also in grade 11 attempting the course for the first time? So it gets kind of muddy, but most of the data that you're talking about, I think what you're referring to, the student would stay with their 5-year cohort. So our 6-year data is, if they're a grad class of 2024, they become a statistic for school completion this year, and then they don't show up in the grad class of 2025. They become a 6-year grad because they're part of that cohort that goes through. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Don. Yeah. Thanks, Laura. Thank you.
Would you like a follow-up question, Mark? Okay.
No, thank you.
Okay. I guess I'm going to ask a question now. I have a few questions, but I'm going to try to make sure I get the good ones here. You had mentioned, Emily, in regards to the Indigenous, I can never remember what the C stands for, ICSWs.
Cultural and student support worker. I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Did you talked about having many of those to go out and to connect with students and stuff. Are we considering hiring more ICSWs? Is that something that we have done? Is that something that we're going to do? Do you find there's a failure to hire? Is there sort of like a challenge in that as well? Perhaps. I imagine there might be, but I don't want to assume. So I'd like to further understand better.
I'm glad you brought that up. That was actually a hot topic today in my office. Like a lot of, bouncing ideas back and forth about, how do we get more people to take this work on, and, just the ways that we can provide like more supportive environments for these people, because it's really hard work, right? Like we know that it's a lot of emotional labor as we work through reconciliation efforts, and our kids need a lot of support. And so, we have such amazing staff that are working in those roles right now, but we always need more. And, I wish we had an unlimited budget and we could just have one at every school and, doing all the great work they're doing. But it's definitely a need, right? It's something that we do need more of. And, that's going to be probably, we'll find those in our community connections, right? So trying to just always be making those connections.
There is definitely a staffing shortage in this regard.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can imagine. Fantastic. So there's a strategic plan to hire more, but it's just how do we hire more? How do we make sure that they have the credentials? I don't really like using that term, but what you need for those positions.
Yeah, qualifications, lived experience.
Qualifications, lived experience, exactly. Okay, fantastic. I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to ask. I'm chair, so I can do that. I'm wondering about the working group. Actually, Naomi sort of asked that question in regards to the IEs and how that is going to be played out. I am curious though. I do wonder, so that the idea is that there's going to be an extension to finishing the course, right? I'm wondering why that was the direction the working group went into, instead of sort of applying resources within the classroom for that time period. What was the thought process, if you have it, if you're able to articulate in regards to kind of a different stream in a way, right? Like, because we always think traditionally, oh, okay, we're going to put resources in the classroom, and you know, we're going to do it within that time frame. What led you to that idea?
So teachers, teachers have always done things differently in classrooms, and students have had opportunities to complete a course beyond the time frame anyways, and lots of schools have done that. They've done a course completion, or they've submitted a new mark to the ministry if additional work has been done. The change was prompted by the ministry changing the guidelines around insufficient evidence. The old guidelines, you could use insufficient evidence during the course, but then at the end of the course, it had to be converted into a letter grade, which would be, you know, ABC, C+, C, C-, or a failing mark. And so the ministry changed it to allow schools up to a full calendar year to change the IE into a mark. So that subtle shift, which really sounds quite minor, has prompted us to say, if the ministry is going to give us another full year to allow a student to complete, then we need to build systems and structures to do right by students to have that success. So yes, to answer your question, we want to do things differently in the class during that 5-month course to increase success. That's always plan A. What can we do differently for the students so that they can successfully complete? Because if they earn their credits in 5 months, it sets them up for success. We just want to be able to say plan B is, if we don't think they're going to make it, let's identify early that we're going to change the time frame. So we're not going to say it's all or nothing, you don't cram it in and get it done or you fail. It's going to be, don't worry, plan A is still to get you through, but if not, we have a plan that extends it. And first semester, you know, for a lot of students, it might extend up to spring break. So it's going to extend by 5 or 6 weeks with a plan to be successful to complete, because we don't want students having to complete a course when they've got other courses on the go. But it is a mind shift, and it takes a lot of work, right? Because as others have pointed out, you know, if I'm that Science 10 teacher and I'm moving across town for second semester, it's different for me, and I'm leaving, and for the staff that are going to be there to help that student to completion, it's different too, right? Because normally they would go down and it would be a bit of a back and forth with the classroom teacher. So it's a shift, but it's a good one, and it was just prompted by a subtle little shift in ministry policy, but it's a good one. It's going to work well for our students.
Just want to emphasize, Chair, if I may, that the lion's share of strategies, interventions, actions are proactive, are those supporting the classroom. In fact, when Dawn spoke about the IE project and working group, in addition, the assessment group, assessment and learning are the same thing. They're just part of the, you know, 2 different parts of the same cycle. Again, that is to prompt that instruction and how we approach teaching. So I just want to be clear and really state that that is the lion's share of where the resources in the district go is to the classroom and that proactive approach. And I would say, you know, ideally we'd want over time to have no IEs and have everyone complete their coursework in that 5 months or what have you. But I also would like to say that, and Dawn has said it on multiple occasions already this evening, that the ministry and the mandates and the structures that we have to work within kind of tell us that there's these semesters and 5 months is a time where you have to do this thing. And we know that everyone does things differently, we hope, you know, and kids are going to want to finish and do things at their own pace if they can. So maybe we could work on getting those IEs lessened, but also look at broadening and changing, making as many structural changes as we can to allow students to do the work and to engage in their learning in the way that suits them best.
Thank you for that. That's true, there is that assessment piece, and I kind of forgot that a little bit, but I really appreciate that, because we have to work with what we have right now, and you know, we don't have the magic pot of money and gold to sort of play with, so we have to we've got what we have right now, and I really appreciate that, and I look forward to what comes of that, and learning more from the working groups and what that's going to look like and stuff. And yeah, and it comes to the budget or anything like that, or the request for more resources, that's, that's fantastic. I really appreciate that information. There's nobody else asking any questions. I do have another question. I'm sorry. It's about the FSAs. And I know that there's not probably an answer yet or anything like that, but I do, we see that there isn't a lot of uptake on people taking FSA sometimes. And so, seeing that information is maybe not as fulsome as we would like, and a clear direction about how people are really, really doing. Is there any alternative strategies that we're looking at so far, maybe started or looking forward into the future, that we want to look at to get our own information and things like that?
Yes, thank you. That's again, great question. So, and thank you for mentioning
Great
that.
answers. Great answers.
Well, this is an area that we're really excited about, and I had mentioned a little bit earlier just the topic of triangulating data. We know that the FSA data, might not always be as reliable as we'd hope due to our low participation, and so we'll continue to, put strategies in place to increase that participation. But in the meantime, absolutely, we need to look at some other really supportive ways that we can garner data, so that schools themselves have the data to plan their interventions, and they have a lot of their own sort of maybe classroom-based data. So just growing and supporting that to the, to the school level, to the district level, so that we can allocate resources accordingly. So we're really looking forward to that. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do so that we're making responsible decisions, and we can report to you as the board responsibly, with both qualitative and quantitative data. So gathering that, we know that qualitative data can sometimes be a little more challenging to gather and present, but we're very mindful of the value of both of those. And it's something we certainly look forward to building out for the board at the district level, and supporting schools at the school level as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I see that Tom has a comment.
If you keep saying interesting things, Laura, we're going to be here all night.
Okay.
So yeah, I was trying to make a connection to the triangulation of data. And, one of the things that I think I've experienced over 20 years as a teacher is that, unfortunately, the culture around data has been kind of weaponized by people that have taken it and used it in not so friendly manners. And that's really unfortunate, because we find ourselves at the point now where organizations like FNESC are begging us to reinforce the FSA because they need that data to support struggling learners. And, we could just put it at the feet of, I don't know, someone who remained nameless, like FI, or I don't know, somebody like that. But the reality is, I would love to see us use a localized, empowered approach to data so that teachers can begin to see it as their own and can begin to see it as something that can empower their teaching, that won't be weaponized against them, that will be part of a culture of improving and working together on things as opposed to isolating and dividing. So whatever we can do at the local level to make our teachers feel that way about data, that's a fantastic move for education writ large. We've got some work to do in this area.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Great comment, Tom. And I think we will leave it on that beautiful note. Amazing work, amazing thoughtfulness put into things, and great team to do that work with, from what I've heard today, and what we're going to see in the future. I think we're going to see these rates going up, and I think we're going to see some folks who are happy to be at school. I mean, it's hard to say, right? Like, our kids are really happy to be at school. It would be great to see those numbers go up, and they will. I really truly feel that they will, with these thoughtful folks that we have in our district. I really appreciate all your hard work on this, and the exciting work that's to come, actually. Thank you very much.
Great.
This has been fantastic.
Thank you so
Great
much.
discussion. Thank you. So we are now going to item 9, which is a correspondence referred from the regular board meeting. We don't have any correspondence referred from the regular board meeting. 10, we have no unfinished business. Item 11, though, we do have the new business item, which is in regards to the tree planting at Quarterway. So Tanya, if you'd like to take it away here.
Thank you. I guess I want to get a sense from staff before I think about anything is how close are we to having the policy that has been mentioned, the environmental policy around the trees?
Sure, I can briefly take that on, and perhaps Dawn can provide a bit more context as well. I'm wondering, Chair, if you could maybe indulge me and I can actually give a little bit more background on the topic as well. So first of all, I want to apologize to the group. I was not at the education agenda setting, so this item probably should have been a business, not education. So sorry about that. Didn't know it was that specific. So with respect to the policy, it's probably quite some time from now. But I also will say, and I don't know quite where the breakdown in communication lay, but it's the decision is not solely related to that. It's one of the pieces of thinking. So just might be helpful to walk through what our process looks like. So when we have a school request, we have, in reality, we have backups for school requests, and so things do take some time. So what happens is a planner will go and meet with the appropriate people at the school level and start down that path of approval and setting out the drawings. It'll go to a next step in facilities as well, who will have a look around and say, okay, yes or no, or here's our concerns. And then it'll go to yet another step. And I know this sounds pretty bureaucratic, but it's meant to protect us. And so in this particular circumstance, there's actually a number of concerns that frankly, I'd love to have our facilities team be able to meet with the parents. I'm not sure that this is the appropriate venue to have that conversation, but I will say the question about the sledding that came up, almost on that fact alone, the fact that it's such a well-used, track of land for that purpose, and putting an obstacle at the bottom, and maybe there's a way around it, would, from a risk management perspective, put the district theoretically, and I'm just putting a theoretical risk out there, but it's a concern that was raised when I was talking to the facilities team about this issue. The other issue is I know that one of the trees is potentially going to be interfering with either future expansion or future childcare. And so what happens is when it gets to that kind of next step where someone senior in facilities looks at it and sees a hiccup or a problem, they're going to go back to the community. And so there I'm just going to say sorry that whatever that communication wasn't as fulsome, I guess, as it should have been, in the sense that it's not necessarily just about a native species of trees. There is more than that. So that communication still, needs to happen. Like I said, I have my doubts about trees at the lower slope due to those issues. I can speak with finality with respect to that, but so that's kind of what the process looks like. But Dawn is in charge of the environmental piece. But I think I know that we can get around, if it's 14 out of 17 or whatever, we can get around the fact that they're not all native species. But Dawn might want to comment.
Yeah, thank you through the chair. While we're the land use guidelines mentioned in the ESAP will take time to complete because it will involve consultation and lots of different hands will be in the writing of that. And in the interim, I think this is a good example where a question has been raised around does their plan for trees align with the board's goals around the ESAP and implementation of that. And I think that can be resolved just by having I can meet with somebody from facilities and we kind of look at at the plan that the planner has put together for, and it sounds like it was really thorough in consulting with the city and species that might grow and be drought resistant over time. So, you know, the ESAP references prioritizing native and indigenous plants, so over non-native plants. So we can look at that. And I think the original plan was 14 of 17 trees. And as Mark has mentioned, I think some of the locations will be revisited as well to make sure that they don't interfere with future childcare spaces. And the slope itself, like I said, I'm sure there's some liability issues that will be observed there, but I don't want to speak on behalf of facility staff who are the ones who take those projects from conception through to completion. And so I think we're just partway through that process, and it sounds like there's maybe 2 or 3 pieces to work out before facilities completes the project.
So, I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I've written a motion here that I was going to present, and I want to present, but I also don't want to hurt the district from a risk management perspective, and I want to do the process properly. I'm just also very frustrated for this PAC who has done the work, feels that they've followed all the steps, and we're under the impression that the only thing that was holding them back was having the staff to do the work. Is it feasible to make a motion that we have that we get a presentation from facilities on this next week, so we can at least get a recommendation from them around a timeline and how we could proceed and how to give these parents some sort of a sense of that this isn't going to drag on for another 5 years, because it's been a long time. Yeah.
So through you, Chair, I mean, I could ask facility staff to come and speak to the things that they would be contemplating. In reality, I don't think we're going to get to that place where, you know, the delivery, like perhaps I need to go back again. They're not at an education meeting.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So I mean, obviously I could commit to having them walk through what their process looks like. And, you know, I know that this is a top of mind. I would actually probably seek a motion though, because I'd maybe like to understand what that motion would look like and what action that the board is contemplating with respect to that motion.
Okay, well, I would be contemplating the original motion I was contemplating was that how did I write it? That we recommend that the trees be grandfathered to allow them to completed prior for this year. If there are that many real hurdles around safety and risk management and that, I can see why that's not feasible, but I would like to see a timeline for a motion. I guess what I would move then is that we get a report from facilities that would include a timeline as to how quickly we could, like, that we could give them some reassurance that next year it could be done at the very least.
Well, perhaps what I would say is I can commit to providing the parents a timeline by which those issues will be looked at. I know Dawn and I talked about that today. I could just commit to that right here without a motion.
Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna stop talking for now and see if anybody else has any comments or thoughts and maybe can help me get clear on what we could do here, because like I say, I'm trying to be fair to everybody.
Yeah, I hear you. Greg.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have some thoughts. So I am concerned that we're getting off track a little bit with respect to the role of the board versus the role of staff and operations. And it's not the board's, from my perspective rather, to direct staff to do operational items. That being said, looking at our board meeting procedures policy 2.6, there does set out a process for the board if it wishes to get information in response to a presentation. And I have put together, because I anticipated this might come up tonight, a motion that I'm going to propose in the chat, which will request that staff, that we refer this presentation regarding the planting of trees on school grounds to the next business committee with the staff report. Because I think we should be receiving this information in general terms versus in specific to this particular presentation. And sorry, I got to stop because I don't want to motivate this motion before, unless I get a seconder. My apologies.
Well,
I'll
I'll
stop myself.
Yeah.
But I put it in the chat, and if I may read it, if there's a seconder, then perhaps I can motivate it. Is it okay if I read it, Chantal?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so, oh, I moved up here. That the Education Committee recommends that the Board of Education of School District number 68 and Nanaimo Lady Smith refer the presentation regarding the planting of trees on school grounds to the next available business committee meeting agenda for discussion, with an accompanying staff report outlining the process for requesting and obtaining approval for planting trees and other landscaping on school grounds, including the selection of plant species, funding of materials and labor, and ongoing maintenance, and any implications with respect to the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan.
I think Naomi's already put in the chat that she would second it, but I would either or.
I'm just waiting for acknowledgement to the chair that I can motivate.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, yes, you can motivate. Naomi seconded your motion.
Thank you, Chantal. Sorry for starting to motivate the motion before it had been seconded. The reason I am proposing this motion is because I believe that it's best practice for us not to debate this issue tonight. I think staff need information, time to gather some information. And in accordance with our policy, I believe this is the appropriate mechanism for us to have this discussion. And also, I want to make sure we're doing our best to keep this at a governance rather than an operational level, because I believe that there are ties here. It so happens that this particular request has come in. However, there are ties here to both our strategic plan and our environmental stewardship action plan, which I do believe the board may be interested in learning more about, and hopefully providing a little bit of opportunity for discussion around streamlining the process in a way that encourages our underutilized spaces to be reforested, to be put back into more of a natural state in accordance with the board's vision in the plan, and trying to remove barriers that we've seen tonight. And that's the hope behind this motion. It's not necessarily specific to the request. However, I feel that this is a first step in providing oversight to this issue in relation to the Environmental Stewardship Action Plan.
Thank you, Greg. That was well said. I believe Naomi actually has an amendment. If you would just like to let us know what that amendment is, Naomi. I think that, Naomi, if you'd like to come on screen. After the last sentence, okay. With a time frame provided, okay. So ongoing maintenance and any implications with respect to the environmental stewardship plan. Where would you like to see that added? So it would be, well, that's a really long that's a long sentence.
Very long. It is very long. I just would like to see landscaping on school grounds, including the section management, but in addition, a time frame of a time frame to be provided of when it possibly could be implemented or something of that time frame. I'm thinking
Do you mean like a time frame for the project or
Yeah,
for the ESAP stuff? Because this is specifically about like more a higher level governance idea, and so
I rescind my amendment.
okay, okay, okay. Thanks, Naomi. I thought I wanted to make sure. So Tanya, if you'd like to speak to the motion.
I actually, Greg, you truly are a voice of reason, and you are correct in what you are suggesting here, because although I am certainly frustrated for this particular group pack that they're been going through the struggle, I think it is far more important that we get the governance pieces and the oversight done and understand it all, so that we don't find ourselves in situations where we're having people having to keep coming to us in these situations. If we've got the clear guidelines and such, then that is a much easier thing. And when we get to that business committee meeting, I can ask some of the questions that I've got for facilities around the big concern I have, which is the timeline pieces around how long it takes to get some of these things done, and how it is that, yeah. So yeah, I think this is probably the right way to go.
Thank you for that, Tanya. Question, yes, Greg.
Well, my apologies, I have a typo in my question, but before we move, I was hoping through you to ask staff just to make sure, because I did have to kind of write this on the fly, that the motion is clear enough and they understand it.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I do believe that I understand, and we'll put our heads together to be able to be prepared once the board passes it, of course. But yes.
Thank you.
Great. Tanya.
Thank you. Just to be clear though, Mark, if you could come back on the screen for a sec. What you had said earlier when we first started this conversation about getting in touch with them, with the PAC, having facilities get in touch with them about what the actual concerns are. This motion would be separate from that. That would still happen, correct?
That's right. That's
okay. As long as that
right.
doesn't.
And in fact, what I would say, if the motion had anything to do with the specific circumstances, then we wouldn't have any contact with them because we'd be waiting for the board to deliberate. So, so yes.
Okay. So as long as they know that they're going to get some contact from you guys, thank you.
Thank you. I was going to say a point of privilege here. I'm not sure I'm using that term correctly. I don't think I am. I was just going to say a few words, but Naomi has called the question in our chat. So we will call the question of Greg's motion, which is that the Education Committee recommends that the Board of Education of School District number 68 and I'm Ladysmith refer the presentation regarding the planting of trees on school grounds to the next available business committee meeting agenda for discussion with an accompanying staff report outlining the process for requesting and obtaining approval for planting trees and other landscaping on school grounds, including the selection of plant species, funding of materials and labor, ongoing maintenance, and any implications with respect to the environmental stewardship plan. I didn't need to read it out loud, but I thought it would be a good idea for folks who are watching this to hear that motion one more time. So we're going to record the vote. So I will ask everybody to put in favor or opposed in the chat, please. And we will record those votes. Thank you. Okay, 7. Leanna, thank you for being very eager. So Leanna, actually, thank you very much, everybody. It looks like it has passed. I think we have everybody that is here to vote has voted, and it has passed. Thank you very much, and I appreciate everyone's patience with this. I kind of allowed the emotion to go to the new business. I think it was kind of an important discussion to kind of have and sort of work out in our minds what it is the best route to take when regards to helping create a good foundation so that folks can go through these projects in a good way, and we can help support staff and empower them to be able to do these facilities requests and beautifying and following our ESAP plan as much as we can. And I really appreciate that for everyone's patience in regards to this. I appreciate the schools coming to present to us. I'm losing all my words now. It's 8:45. It's good to know these things bring up questions for us in regards to governance and policy and how things are working and how we create plans and how sometimes it might have unintended consequences for employees or for our students or for our families. And this can help us guide us in doing good work that helps everybody in the end. And so with that, we will be going to questions, if there's any questions from the meeting. No questions. Okay, I think we have asked them all. Thank you very much, everybody, for this evening. I just have one last thing to say, and that it is Autism Awareness or Autism Acceptance Month. It was Autism Acceptance Day yesterday, a worldwide day where everybody celebrates these wonderful autistics. What I think is great is that everybody learn more, hear more from autistics and their experiences, and learn from diverse experiences from all autistics, because once you've met one autistic person, you've only met one autistic person. And I really appreciate everybody here and their hard work in helping everybody, including our autistic students and our autistic staff. And we'd like to celebrate you and make people aware that that's this month, but we can do it every day of the year. So thank you very much, everybody. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Tanya? Oh, no, Naomi got there first. Oh, I've got so many people saying so. I'm going to say Tanya seconds that motion. And anybody opposed by any chance? Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Have a great evening. It's up to everybody. Thank you.